Hello everyone, this is Peter Lau from the University of Hong Kong. Welcome to join this pre-recorded presentation sections. My topics today is on graduate teaching assistant understanding of the fundamental values of academic integrity at the Hong Kong University. I'm a lecturer at the Centers for Enhancement of Teaching and Learning at Hong Kong U. I provide professional development to teaching colleagues, and I'm particularly interested to support the research postgraduate student for their teaching duty, as they are so much important to support teaching and learning at my university. I'm going to share with you the results of a case study that I have done during the pandemic to develop academic integrity for the postgraduate teaching assistant. Those content could be accessed in this journal article at the Frontiers in Education. So please feel free to access to this journal article at this link. The first purposes of this case study is to understand how postgraduate students at the Hong Kong University perceive academic integrity before and after an intervention. So the intervention is called Trail of Integrity and Ethics. So that is actually a virtual learning activity that make use of augmented reality technology and mobile application to help students acquire the abstract concept of integrity. The second purpose is to compare student perception with the 6 fundamental values promoted by the ICAI, International Center of Academic Integrity. The last purpose is to assess the effectiveness of this intervention. However, due to the limitations of the time, I will only focus on the first 2 purposes to present to you. Academic integrity, brief introduction. So let me briefly introduce the academic integrity in the general sense. Integrity represents to the personal choice for consistent commitment to comply with the ethical principle even in adverse circumstances. Academic integrity hence refer to the collections of ethical value and behavior demonstrated by individual within the academic context. So all the daily applications, practice of teaching and learning, research, and other service in academia will be included. For the fundamental values of academic integrity, some background. In 1999, the ICAI defined academic integrity as a commitment to the 5 fundamental values for all academic activity, namely honesty, trust, fairness, respect, and responsibility. However, many studies identify that peer pressure is one of the most tainting factors leading to academic misconduct. And there's a very terrifying result from Caroline. They argue that the social multiplier for academic cheating could be as high as 3. And it is, of course, it is easier said than done. However, we have to understand that students may be afraid of ending their friendship with their peers. So in 2013, courage was then introduced as an additional element to the 5 values. In our university, we try to adopt to a field approach to develop student integrity at our university. So the first approach is disciplinary approach. So what we have done at the university is to set the policy and regulations in order to regulate proper practice and procedure. So it emphasizes on the fact that anyone who violates relevant policies should be liable to penalty or other negative consequence, such as a fail grade or disqualification. It works well to discourage students from cheating in examination, committing plagiarism in coursework, or data falsification in research. However, students tend to pay much attention to avoid the consequence, but not focus on the underlying value and morality of academic honesty. So this is just only a behavioral change. On the other hand, the university also tried to adopt to this educational approach. So in this educational approach, we try to develop the understanding of academic integrity through the participations in different mandatory programs, such as inductions, seminars, and workshops. So in our university, all the postgraduate students are required to complete the online course of responsible conduct of research. So that is actually under the city, right? Collaborative Institutional Training Initiative Program. It is an online course. And what the student have to do is to choose one of the 5 existing research areas, including the clinical research, social research, science, humanities, engineering, and architecture. After finishing the program, the student have to obtain a score of at least 80% in the quizzes so that they can pass the course. So after that, the student will require to sign a declarative form and submit the form to their faculty office. It is helpful for the student to learn the necessary knowledge and skill to avoid any misconduct. However, one major limitation of this approach is that knowing the correct answer to questions will not lead to a person to act ethically at all times, because it's just only develop the students' cognitive thinking, right? So this is cognitive change. So this is another approach that I would like to suggest. It's called developmental approach. So in this approach, we try to put students in various real-life scenario or dilemma in which they have to make ethical decisions, argue for their choices, and reflect on their learning. It helps to reinforce student ability to interpret the situations, analyze if there is any possible consequence. It will help to justify the choice for practical solution rather than the ideal options. Students are given the opportunity to reflect on their experience and try to consolidate their thoughts to better prepare themselves for any similar circumstance in the future. And that is going to provide attitudinal change. To summarize the framework, the 3 different approaches is going to help the students to adapt to different change, to achieve different outcomes. Disciplinary approach is going to help the student to have behavioral change. Educational approach is going to induce cognitive change. And developmental approach is going to encourage or promote attitudinal change. And what are the impact on the students is that the student will behave very differently. Okay, in the disciplinary approach, they're very passive. Okay, but in the developmental approach, they become an active learner. So this is a brief introduction to the interventions that I've done in the case study. In these interventions, I try to make use of this trail of integrity and ethics. So it is a mobile learning applications. So the student have to download these applications, and then you can see that the student will receive the map on the left-hand side. Okay, and for each checkpoint, the student will have to scan QR code or do the image recognitions or Bluetooth or making use of the GPS as a trigger to trigger different scenario. However, during the pandemic, because of the social distancing requirement, so all the students have to stay home and then they participate to this activity. So what I've done is to provide them with the QR code, and they will use their phone to scan the QR code and then get the scenario and then fulfill the task. For more details of the tools, you can refer to this web page. And the scenario we provide to the student include data falsifications, citations, and the use of library resources. So the sample in this case study were research postgraduate students. There are 3 sampling criteria. The first one is that they should finish the university mandatory research ethics course. And they should also complete the mandatory training course for teaching duty. And they should enroll to the university for at least 1 semester. And finally, 33 postgraduate students participate, and they are from 7 different faculty, namely architecture, arts, education, engineering, science, social science, and medicine. The participants were required to submit a short reflective writing on their understanding of academic integrity before and after intervention. So I have done a flexible thematic analysis, which is a hybrid approach of deductive process and inductive process. And finally, I identified 8 themes, 6 values, which are matched with the ICAI values, and 2 new elements. In these figures, we can figure out that honesty and respect might be the most familiar value to the participant. When we compare with the other 4 ICAI values, namely trust, fairness, responsibility, and courage, we can see that the number of students respond relating to these 4 values are relatively lower compared with honesty and respect. And we also identify 2 new elements, empathy and mindfulness. To summarize the student perception on these 2 elements, first, empathy. Student identifies that from the student perceptions, they feel that the development of the attitude and willingness to put oneself in a situation, for example, how bad is the feeling if someone treats on me, or steal ideas from my works. So this actually aligns with the traditional Confucius thought from the 论语. Do not do to others what you do not want to be done to you. So it emphasizes the need to take into considerations the cultural and educational background of the reader, for example. And we identify that this is actually different from the 6 ICAI value, because the 6 fundamental value of ICAI mostly emphasize on the positive consequence of upholding academic integrity. For the mindfulness, from the students' perceptions, they believe that the development of self-regulating ability in academic environment without watch from others is important. So they use self-awareness and consciousness to represent these ideas. And somehow they also think that it is important to stay alert in the ever-changing environment because new temptations would turn up from time to time. For example, the online examination in the pandemic. Mindfulness or being mindful in this context would enable them to suspend any emotional reactions and then we think before making any decisions. So here come to the discussions. Though some participants in this study perceive empathy as an important attribute in developing academic integrity, there is very limited discussion in the literature. I try to borrow insights from other relevant studies on ethical decision making and morality, and I find that there is a dark side of empathy that would lead to unethical decision. There's a need to delineate the limit of empathy in decision making, and we have to emphasize these kinds of dark side of empathy and try to avoid any misinterpretation to prevent students from falling into the trap induced by the empathetic emotions. A well-developed mindfulness might help them to overcome the struggle and make an informed decision in uncertain circumstances. Developing real-life scenario to discuss on the empathy and mindfulness might be particularly important in Hong Kong context. So here are the references I have cited. Finally, I would like to say thanks to Dr. Eva Wong and her project teams. They were so generous to invite me to join their project and make use of the mobile applications to enhance my student learning in the course. Please feel free to send me your view, comments through this email address, pfmlau@hongkongu.hk. I'm happy to further discuss academic integrity with you. Thank you.